Okay, let's call the meeting to order. And we'll do the roll call. Kirk Jarrett,
Committee Member Cosbrook. Committee Member Williams. Vice Chair Jarrett.
Here.
Chair Lawton.
present. Now we'll do the land acknowledgement. City of Cotati recognizes that we're on the ancestral lands of the coastal Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennium. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with the indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land we are on. And I will say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we will have approval of the minutes from February 18th, 2026. Approval of the minutes.
Like to
Okay.
make a motion for approval?
Any seconds to the motion? Okay. The
And
minutes are approved.
before you formally
Okay.
vote to approve, just make sure you take public comment on it if there is any.
Sorry. So we'll take public comment on the minutes from the last meeting.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lawton. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands, that will end public comment.
All right. And so are there any changes to the agenda?
No proposed changes.
Is there any public comment or oral written communications?
Thank you. Yes, it looks like we do have a hand on Zoom. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori. You have the floor.
Hi, this is more of a question and something to talk about. On the SAFE teams, funding, federal funding is, and state funding looks like it's gonna be cut in this coming budget year. And I'm wondering if there's any alternate plans, or is there a way to incorporate those services in the future? Okay, thank you.
And seeing no further hands on Zoom, that will end public comment.
All right. Let's go to the matters at hand. Do we have any matters we need to deal with?
We'll have the police chief give the report, quarterly report.
All right, let's start it off. Good evening, everyone. So I suspect this will be a fairly short report. I'm going to go over our first quarter statistics. So that's January, February, and March. And we have the PowerPoint and we're ready to go. So next slide, please. All right, jumping right into it. So our calls for service, the total events that we had were 3,288. You can see it pretty much split down the middle between our officer-initiated activities and our calls for service. This is dispatched calls for service. If you look back, our quarter one in 2025 was 3,248 events. So we're right along lines with how we were last year at the same time period. Next slide, please. Arrests, we had 117 total arrests for Q1 in this year. Last year, Q1, we were at 122. And we were at 509 total in 2025. So about a quarter of that ends up being about 127. So again, we're along lines, the same lines as we were last year. Next slide. Looking at the top 5 crimes that we had during this time. So driving under the influence, no surprise. You've heard me talk about it quite frequently. A lot of enforcement that our officers do proactively for driving under the influence. A lot of traffic safety, training, education, and obviously enforcement that we do. So that's usually going to be at the top of the crime trend. That was the same as it was last year. Drugs, narcotics, disorderly conduct. I think I've described it before. It's basically, when we have folks that are getting in physical altercations, verbal altercations, that sort of thing, bar scene kind of events that happen around here. That's usually where those statistics come from. Shoplifting, and then simple assault. That tends to bleed into sometimes into disorderly conduct. Simple assault is like a simple battery, and I say simple meaning that usually rises to a misdemeanor type of level. Someone pushes somebody else or that sort of thing. But those are the top 5 types of crimes that we're dealing with, and this is generally across the board the type of things that you see in Cotati, which is a good thing because violent crime is not something that we see very often around here. Next slide, please. All right, citizen complaints. So we had 3 complaints in the first quarter. So January, we had 2 complaints, and in March, we had 1. One was related to conduct. One was related to procedural, meaning policy violations. They're all potentially policy violations, but 2 are related to conduct. Those are allegations against our officers' conduct, rude, discourteous behavior. Those are the kind of general complaints that fall under what would be a conduct complaint. Next slide. So you'll see that out of those 3, 2 were unfounded and 1 was sustained. And what I'll tell you about the sustained one is that essentially there was a piece, and we had something similar to this. This is some time ago when we had a complaint. A piece of that complaint, when we actually went back and watched the body-worn camera footage, was sustained. But the rest of the complaint was unfounded. So we had a complaint about that particular complaint was related to all sorts of different things about a traffic stop, use of force, all sorts of legal complaints about how the officer didn't have the right to pull the person over. All those things were unfounded. But there was a piece of that complaint where the officer, we thought, wasn't professional, or at least as professional as I would expect per our policy. And so they were sustained on that. And so I still count that just from a transparency standpoint, rather than just say, hey, the complaint was unfounded. There was a piece of it that the officer was counseled on because of the way that he spoke to the citizen. That makes sense. So that's why you see it that way. Next is our use of force. Next slide. In this slide, this is again regarding Department of Justice use of force, which is usually shooting, officer-involved shooting, officer use of force where serious bodily injury occurred. We didn't have anything like that occur, and so that shows up as 0. Next. As you've heard me talk about, we do our use of force even to the extent where it's displayed. So those aren't technically, by at least DOJ standards, uses of force, but we track them anyway for purposes of transparency and for sharing with you the types of incidents that we had. So again, looking at the incidents, we had 3,288 instances, 117 resulted in arrests. But if you look at our use of force instance, so we had 7 events, right? And we had 8 total. 6 of the 7 resulted in arrest and custody. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But we had 8 times that force was used. And usually that number will be higher than the actual instances and events, right? Because that can include if 2 officers were involved in taking someone into custody, we count that as 2 uses of force, but still 1 event, right? And so we had 7 events, but on one of those events, there was another officer using force. And so it totaled 8. That's why you see that number there. One was a firearm displayed, and the other were one baton or impact weapon, we call it impact weapon, and then 6 control holds, defensive techniques, which is generally taking someone into custody or putting in some sort of restraint where you're taking them into custody and putting them in handcuffs. So on the use of force, we had one that was not, because usually when you use force, those things are ending up in arrest. 9 times out of 10, they're ending up in arrest. In this, there was one instance where we had a person who was on a traffic stop, refused to sign, became uncooperative. They said, okay, I'm going to go to jail because you have to sign your ticket, right? So the officer was taking that person into custody, used, a restraint technique to get them into custody. And then as they were about to go to jail, they said, okay, I'll sign the ticket. And so the officer, using his discretion, who could have just taken that person to jail, actually uncuffed them, let them sign their ticket, and gave them that warning, and then they were on. So that's why that didn't result in an arrest, at least a custodial booking arrest in that regard. Oh, and by the way, just because it stands out as one, so firearm displayed. There was a shooting incident that happened, and there was a high-risk traffic stop where the shooting suspect was taken into custody. And so the officer displayed his firearms at a high-risk traffic stop. What we call a felony car stop is taking someone out of the car at gunpoint because they pose a very high risk. And then they were taken into custody without incident. But that's where you see the firearm displayed. Next slide. This just describes the use of force, the different types of use of force, uses of force that we have. Next slide. We had a couple of noteworthy community events with Thomas Page. We have the Water for South Sudan project. This is a project that they've done now a number of years where the students read a book about water for Sudan and for helping other people. They end up having a bake sale. That's us at the bake sale. And they write letters to usually a lot of the police department, actually city folks too, city staff, and write letters about their experience in this book. And so, and then we'll respond back to them. It's just kind of an interesting, fun interaction. So we did that. We had Ner Shalom. They had basically a security type of training because of some of the issues obviously going on where the Jewish community had some concerns about their own safety. And so we have done and are continuing to do interactions with them on training and safety and making sure that those community members feel safe. Next slide. Always a lot of training. Actually, training was a little light in this first quarter comparatively. But at the end of the day, a lot of the perishable skills training that we do, and we try to do, we have core trainings that we have to do per the Peace Officer Standards and Training every year and throughout the year. So we're mainly budgeted for that. But there's also other trainings that help make our officers even more skilled beyond the basic training, which is always something we strive for. Anytime there's an opportunity for alternate funding streams or ways in which we can get into training with either no tuition or local around here, we always try to do that. It's a cost saving, but luckily we have a good group of partners within at least the 9 Bay Area counties here from a training perspective. So our folks get a lot of training, and this outlines some of the training that they received. Next slide. And finally, just a couple of things I wanted to note. So we wanted to throw out that we have our Neighborhood Watch beat meeting on Monday, June 15th at 5 p.m. at the police department. So encourage folks to come on by and talk with our officers. And we enjoy hearing from the community about what's going on from their perspective and anything we can do to be more interactive with them and make them feel safe as well. I did want to highlight, I mentioned a shooting investigation that we had. We did have a shooting here in Cotati. And it was, I've talked about Flock. We have the 2 cameras that are here. And we've had really good success with those cameras. And this shooting was just an example of that. I just wanted to mention it, that we would not have solved this shooting had we not had Flock cameras. And there was a car that came in that we were able to identify the plate of that car. That was the suspect who was involved in the shooting. The car then left right after the shooting. Flock picked it up on both ends. And then Flock in another area outside in Windsor picked up that car too. And that's how we were able to take these people into custody and identify them. So it was a huge investigative tool for us in what I consider to obviously be a violent crime, a rare crime, but a violent crime related to, also related to relationships, but it was also related to gangs in Cotati. So luckily we had this piece of equipment that was helpful as a tool for our investigation. So that was a good thing. And also, and I think I might have mentioned this at some point, I've mentioned it to council a time or two. You know, we have these less lethal shotguns that we use. On the annual report, you see them as one of the military equipment that I have to mention, or at least by statute, by law. There's special things they call it military equipment. It doesn't mean it's military equipment, but the state has designated certain pieces of equipment that police use as military equipment. A less lethal shotgun is one of them. We have a couple of those. And so, but what I don't like about less lethal shotguns is they are actually lethal shotguns with different, I call it different furniture, different colored furniture. So the stock and the forend are a different color, it's an orange color, right? To signify that that the rounds that it takes are less lethal rounds, right? But the problem is with a shotgun, these particular shotguns, if you take a less lethal round out, you can load it with a lethal round. And I don't like a piece of equipment that's supposed to be for purposes of less lethal that is potentially, the mistake of someone accidentally loading a live round in it, right? And so there's other platforms that I think are safer and that are used more in the industry they're not a lot. Less lethal shotguns, you're not seeing a lot of them nowadays in modern policing. They're around, but there's what they call a 40 millimeter blue tip, and it's a larger surface area of a round, but it's like they call it a sponge round, and so it's a way to potentially incapacitate a suspect, right? But do it in a way that obviously isn't lethal. But I think when someone sees a shotgun, it looks like a shotgun because it is a shotgun, right? When you see this piece of equipment, it looks like something different. It looks like a less lethal piece of equipment, right? So there's more on that, but I just wanted to throw that out there. That's something that we're looking into as an alternate piece of equipment, and something that I think will be safer for the department ultimately. But we're still looking into that. And with that actually concludes my PowerPoint, and I'm happy to take any questions or any comments.
I have a question. Of course, I go back a long ways. So do we still have, there used to be where senior citizens would call every morning, and it was called our "You OK" call. Is that still in effect?
No, I don't know. Yeah, we do vacation checks. So someone can call and say, hey, I'm going to be gone for this period of time. And so we put that on our board, and so they know to do extra patrol in that area, just look out for a house in particular. We get calls all the time about folks that are senior citizens or folks that may need extra assistance. So we do take tally of that, right? But we don't have something where we necessarily proactively reach out to someone in that regard. Now we have leveraged some of the like SAFE, for example, and Lori mentioned that, but with SAFE, that if we have someone who's in needs of some sort of, if they have some sort of need in that regard, or maybe we could leverage SAFE for some of that interaction. If they need some sort of services or they need some help with something, then SAFE would be at least an option or a tool for that. But yeah, I don't know if there was a specific program or something that used
I
to.
believe it was done by computer. It wasn't person to person. It was just "Are you OK" check daily for people who needed that. But you actually anticipated my next question. We still have the vacation check program?
Yep, absolutely.
That's a good program.
Yeah. Yep. And we call it vacation check. It can be for any number of things where someone has a concern about a particular location or a particular house, or even someone, hey, this house is for sale. Someone's moved out. We know where those houses are because, those can be targeted at times, or whether that's for someone trying to, live in the house when they don't live there, or someone that, if that house has something in it, trying to steal it, et cetera. But when people let us know about that, then we put it on our rotation, and then it's part of our beat kind of patrol rotation that we have in terms of they know to go to those houses. It's part of their routine patrol throughout the day and throughout
Yeah, and Katati's really good about it. If somebody requests extra patrol, if there's a problem in that neighborhood, Katati does do the extra patrol, which is really nice.
Yep.
People could call and just request that, and they do it, so.
Yeah, we're super lucky that just in the fact that being a smaller town
Yeah.
and then the response time being so quick and just the fact that, they can hit a number of areas multiple times throughout the day. And it's great. So we can, you can vary that up. So, if someone's casing a place or something like that, but that we're around. But I think, yeah, sometimes we'll get calls all the time with people, hey, someone's not stopping at the stop sign in front of my house, someone's speeding through my neighborhood, that sort of thing. So we encourage those calls, and we want those calls because that helps us, in terms of our traffic education and enforcement and that sort of thing. So we'll go out there. We have a speed trailer that we'll put up sometimes. We'll do enforcement, we'll do education, that sort of thing. So yeah, we're out and about.
And just, back a little bit, there's a problem with the big cities of people throwing paintballs and stuff that flock cameras. That's,
Oh, yeah.
is it, I think I'm correct, with 3 of the cases of Katati flock is why they were able to get, I believe it was 3 cases of a pedestrian hit or something like that. Isn't flock been good for 3 different times, I believe?
Well, it's more than that. And even in this last quarter, it's definitely more than 3 times that we've used Flock for different hits at different times. So I remember now, so Flock isn't a surveillance camera. It's only for the plate and the picture. It takes a picture of the plate and piece of the car, right? But it's not something we can go back surveillance wise. So in other words, there's pros and cons to that, right? That cuts both ways. But, and so there's benefit to some cameras that are surveillance cameras, but, in Flock's case, that's not the case, but there have been a couple of times where lately where we either had a plate or a type of car, or at least the time a day. We've had a hit and run before, right? And so they get a partial plate, or even just a white car drove by during this time, and we can put that into Flock for an investigative search of a white car during that time, and it'll give us all the white cars that had the different plates. And then we can kind of, it was a sedan. It was a hatchback. It was that sort of. And so, or usually people get a plate or a piece of a plate. And when you have that, that's really beneficial.
It's a very good tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it for me.
I'm not sure, and I should know this. Our quarterly report, does that go January through March?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
This was about probably 3 weeks ago. And Wednesday at Oliver's is senior day. So it's always busy. I'm at the checkout counter and I see one of your officers chasing a guy down the freezer lane.
Yep.
And I was with my wife, so she said, why don't you go over and observe that? So I did. And what I want to say is, within 5 minutes less, there were 3 officers there. Probably within 2 minutes, they had him handcuffed, and it was only a restraint. One officer, he was quite dramatic, screaming for help,
Yes.
not knowing why he was being arrested, and then asked me if I'd call the sheriff. And I'm like, I think you're going to see the sheriff.
I think he'd prefer us over the sheriff, to be honest with you.
But I wanted to say that observing that and the community obeyed everything they were supposed to with the parameter. It was really kind of amazing because it's very busy.
Mhm.
And it took 3 of them to take him down. But as soon as one officer said, if you don't calm down, we're going to have to tase you, he shut up. So I never saw anybody go for their taser or anything. He was just letting him know, we got to get this under control. So I just wanted to let you know that was very good. The community was good about it, and your officers did the right thing. Everybody went back to like nothing ever happened.
A little fun in Oliver's. Yeah, no, in going back, I was watching the body worn cameras of all those, because we, it was considered a use of force incident, right? That individual attacked one of our officers and then fled, and then tried to get our other officer in a chokehold. And so that's the kind of individual we were dealing with, right? And so they actually showed incredible restraint given that type of individual and how
Mhm.
dangerous that individual was, and the fact that he'd run in a store. That, of course, elevates the safety issue because we have
Right.
customers and people around and that sort of thing. So they have to be aware of that as well. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
they
glad to
did a
hear
great
that. Yeah,
job.
yeah, great. That'll be on the next quarterly report. He went to jail.
Pardon?
He went to jail. He was booked into custody.
Okay, so they had a vehicle outside and they took him.
So initially it started out as a traffic stop and then
Uh-huh.
he fled from the vehicle. He ran. There was a foot pursuit into the
So
store.
the cops took him in the police vehicle then?
Correct. After he was taken into custody and arrested, they took him in a police
Mhm.
vehicle and they transported him up to Santa Rosa and
Uh-huh.
he was booked into jail for assaulting a police officer.
Where he was able to meet a county sheriff deputy.
Yeah, so
which
he
is
got
what-
his
yeah.
wish to
He got
see
his
the
wish.
sheriff.
You got to
Nice.
observe that.
Aim to please.
Any, are there any comments from the public?
Thank you, Chair Lawton. Checking in once again with our Zoom attendees. If you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands, that will end public comment.
And
Ask about, we had quite a discussion about ICE at the last meeting, and then we had a joint meeting with the city council that it took some action, and I wondered if there's been anything since then that has happened, or if any ICE people have showed up in the area or anything.
Not a one. Nope,
Oh,
nothing.
okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, as I think you know, based on the feedback from the joint meeting, the council subsequently adopted a resolution, right?
Yes,
So that was a follow-up action, but
Right.
then, yeah, but there's
Yeah.
been no ICE or Customs and Border Control activity that
Right.
neither one of us are
Yeah.
aware of.
And that resolution didn't change anything in terms of our standard operating procedure at the police department, the way we would, from whether it be notification or our interaction, et cetera. So we just, but yeah, no, we haven't heard or seen anything here. So that's a good thing.
do we have any report from the staff?
I don't believe we have any further
No.
reports at this
No
time.
report.
Okay. Any other comments, Carol? Anything else? Okay. Any more public comments?
Yes, one more time, checking in with our Zoom attendees. If you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands, that will end public comment.
Any information received after the agenda was posted?
There was not. Thank you.
Okay. Well, no other comments. I think we're ready to adjourn at 6:30.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Uh-huh.